Welcome back. Today I find myself in Salt Lake City where I am on my way home after working with the congregation in Idaho. Today we're going to talk about what it means to be a self-differentiated leader, and specifically what it means to be a self-differentiated leader in your context in terms of time management, especially as budding pastors or staff members in churches. And I know that this doesn't apply to some of you at this point, that you're taking this course in preparation for, or you're taking this course because you want to hone your leadership skills, but you may never be the pastor of a church, and that's fine. This is going to be very helpful no matter what you're doing, but specifically time management for leaders of the church. In small churches, one of the biggest problems with the stuff you're learning in this course is, how do I arrange my schedule to do the things that you're being asked to do as a leader, and when you're in a church that has expectations that you do this and this and this and this and this and this and this, and you get the picture. In a small church, the reality is, in most cases, you'll find yourself on a hamster wheel, running round and round doing what we call pastor fetch. Pastor, fetch this. Pastor, do that. Pastor, we expect you to. Pastor, have you gone? Pastor, are you? You get the drift. In most churches, in most settings, especially small churches, when it talks about this self-differentiation stuff and time management stuff, we have two major issues that we have to confront, and it's normally one or the other. The first issue we face is with a pastor who says, but I like doing ministry. And we get that. I totally understand that, and most of us went into ministry, not all of us, but most of us went into ministry because we like, or we thought we would like, we dreamed of or felt called to taking care of the flock. And the church needs people to do those kinds of ministries. And if you're a doer, and you would rather be a doer than lead, in terms of what you're learning in this course, if you'd rather do rather than lead, and that's okay. It's totally okay if that's what you're about. My request, my expectation, is that you will not attempt to lead your church into anything that looks like significant growth. Because if you do, and if you are a doer and you're committed to doing, you will be the reason that the congregation fails at its growth initiative, because it will grow to a certain height, a certain size, and it will crash and burn and come right back down. And I can tell you that we see it happen over and over and over, and it's the number one reason, seriously, it's the number one reason churches don't break what we call the 200 barrier. I call it the brick ceiling. It's the reason they can't get bigger than 200, 250, sometimes 300 before they start coming right back down to 180 to 175 or thereabouts, which is where they're comfortable. And typically it's because the pastor is comfortable there. Sometimes it's a congregational issue, and you already know, based on the conversations we've already have, that if it's a congregational issue, the congregational issue is because the leader hasn't been able to lead the congregation. They haven't been able to cast an appropriate vision, a compelling enough vision. They haven't been able to build alliances. They haven't been able to deal with those who would stop the church from growing, etc. It's, again, all rises and falls on leadership. So, if you are committed to being a doer, then do. For heaven's sakes, if that's what you're called to do, then do it. But don't become confused and think you're going to grow your church in a significant manner, because it will fail. The more common scenario, though, that we find in smaller churches and pastors who are trying to grow their church or want to grow their church is that the church likes you doing ministry. They really like you doing all that so that they don't have to. In fact, a lot of church members will tell you that's why they hired you. They hired you to do ministry. They hired you to do the hospital visitation. They hired you to visit the sick, to visit the people who are shut-ins, and to, most important, visit the membership, and to make sure that the worship service is to their liking, and that you offer Bible studies to their liking and to their needs, etc., etc. Now, that all sort of sounds like pastor fetch, like pastor do this and pastor do that. And we also know, as we've had conversations already, that's not the biblical model of pastoral leadership. So, we're going to talk about the two ways to get out of the pastor fetch model. And the first and the easiest and the best way is don't start. If and when it comes time for your interview and you're interviewing with a congregation as a possible candidate for a pastor, somewhere in that interview be very clear, be very self-differentiated about what you're all about what you'll do and what you won't do. When I became the interim pastor at First Christian Church in Mexico, Missouri, I flat out said during the interview, I don't do hospital visits. I won't do membership visits. I was clear from the beginning. I told them that I would train their people, I would train them, actually, and the elders of that church, how to do that ministry, but that once I had trained them, I would not engage in it. You know what? I got the job. Self-differentiation isn't a bad thing. And here's the deal. If they didn't want to hire me on those terms, I didn't want to go. Because I knew what my ministry was. I knew what my leadership strengths were. I knew what my mission was in that congregation or in any congregation I've ever led, and what it is that needed to get done and what I needed to do to get it done. So the best way to not end up doing pastor fetch is to say up front what you will do and what you won't do. And it's better to do that while you're in the driver's seat of interviewing, because you're never in a better position for negotiations before you're hired than you will be after you've been hired. The problem is that often we find ourselves in a congregation, like before we took this course, and we don't negotiate that up front. And so now we are doing things, and I work with congregations all the time, where the pastor's doing the bulletin, not just writing it, but printing it, sometimes folding it, stapling it if it's a multi-page bulletin. They're doing the hospital visitations, they're doing the pastoral care visitations, they're doing pastoral counseling, they're doing, and when I tell them you need to spend, and you've already seen this figure in the reading this week, 70 to 80% of your time with unchurched people, they freak out. How can I do that? What am I supposed to do? How do I manage my time so that I spend that much time with people who are not my members? So you have to be able to say, this is what I do, what I don't do. And if you're already in the situation, then you have to begin a process of handing off ministries. But to do that, you have to know who you are. You have to know what you're about. You have to know what's important. And you have to essentially know what you'll do, what you won't do, what you're good at, what you're not good at. We went through that Strength Finders exercise. One of the things that is a reality is that all those strengths you identified, they're not your strengths. They're talents. They're proclivities. Those are things you can be very strong in, but may not yet be. You have to put the energy and the effort into those strengths to make them an actual strength. Well, the same goes here. You have to understand, to be a self-differentiated leader, you have to know who you are so you can differentiate yourself from those around you, from your church. And so I have 3 questions for you, and of course I have them in writing for you, but here's the 3 questions that I want you to wrestle with this week. First, what is your personal mission statement? A mission statement is something that says, just like the church, mission statement says, why do I exist? What is it I'm trying to accomplish with my life? Not a mission statement for this church. What's a mission statement for your life? My personal mission statement is to be a resource for churches in North America to become effective, faithful, and sustainable. That's what I do. That's where I spend the majority of my time and all my vocational time, helping churches to become increasingly effective increasingly faithful, and increasingly sustainable. That's who I am. Who are you? What are you about? The second question is, what are you doing in your ministry and in your life that is getting in the way of you achieving your mission? And the final question, what are you going to do about it? What are you going to do about those things that are getting in the way, of you being who God has called you to be and to do what God has called you to do? All right. I'll see you next week. I suspect I'll be in Arkansas. Take care.